at your library. I'm Clayton Cheever, the Assistant Director at the Thomas Crane Public Library. Please join me for a look at some of the free events our library is offering this October. As these trying times continue, we are working hard to inspire curiosity, spark imagination, foster community, and connect people to the online world. Have you taken advantage of our to-go printing service at our main library yet? Monday through Saturday, we now have people coming into our main library to use computers, print files, make copies, fax documents, and use our scanner. If you'd like to come into the library to do any of those things, I encourage you to give us a call and make an appointment for up to an hour session at 10, 11:30, 1, or 2:30 daily, Monday through Saturday. If you need to print or make copies, you can also have up to 20 pages for free. Scanning and faxing services are also free, and those are self-serve. We are also continuing to offer safe outside pickup of library materials and printouts at our main location in Quincy Center. You can drop off your library books if you're done using them at all of our locations. If you need to return DVDs or CDs, please only put them in the new tan box near the entrance closest to Washington Street at our main library. I should remind you too, we are now completely overdue fine free. That's right, you're not going to pay any more overdue fines here at the library. Please just bring your things back when you're done using them. We have a lot of free online resources too. Just visit our website at thomascranelibrary.org to learn more. We understand it's not always easy to know what's available at the library, and it's even more challenging in these times. We've tried to make things easier by creating a page dedicated to information about our current services. Simply navigate to our homepage at thomascranelibrary.org and you'll find a link to this new page in our news block. Now I want to tell you about some programs coming up this month I think you're really going to like. It wouldn't be fall without the Red Sox. We can't go and enjoy a game at Fenway Park this year, so I decided it would be great to spend some time with an author who recently had his book, The Ultimate Boston Red Sox Time Machine, published. This program, which was originally scheduled for September, will now be happening on Monday evening, October 5th at 7, live on Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook. Marty, thanks so much for joining me today and talking about this great program we're going to be doing, all about your book and our favorite hometown baseball team, the Boston Red Sox. How long have you been a Sox fan?
I've been a Sox fan all my life. Actually, I visited Boston in 1967, the impossible dream year when I was a kid.
67, did you say?
Yes.
Like 2? How did you visit in 67?
No, I was 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm 63 years old now, but
You're looking good for 63, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we have a young-looking family, and it always seems to work out real well with that. But so I was visiting Boston with my parents, and my dad took me to Fenway Park, and actually, the difference between Fenway Park and old Cleveland Municipal Stadium, which was a mausoleum back then. It was 80,000 seats and was really far away, and there was only a trickling of fans show up. And here I am. It's the Fenway Park's right off the street, and there's all this hustle and bustle and all these fans pouring in. And then I come into Fenway Park and see this beautiful, the Green Monster and the close knit kind of family atmosphere there. It was such a difference between Cleveland Municipal Stadium, and I fell in love with it immediately. And it was really at that time that I became a very ardent Red Sox fan, along with being an Indians fan as well. But when I had an opportunity to write a book about the Red Sox, I jumped all over it when the publisher gave me that opportunity. And I've always been a huge Red Sox fan.
And so your book is the ultimate Boston Red Sox time machine book. So
that's correct.
How did you, what kind of resources did you go to jump back in time? How did you go and do it? Did you come and dig into the crates and dig into the bowels of Fenway Park? How did you go about your work?
Yeah, well, I did. I used a lot of online resources, obviously, and old newspapers to go back. And a lot of it was from my own memory, too. I based a lot of it on my own memory of Red Sox history, but I used old newspaper articles, and I used a lot of online sources and Red Sox books.
And there are a lot of Red Sox books,
including Burying the Curse. Yeah, there were a lot of those that I used as well. But I wanted to make sure that this encompassed the entire history of the Red Sox from well before the selling of Babe Ruth in 1919,
and the curse.
I wanted to, yes, I went right from the beginning from about 1901. So really, the book is based on 120 years of Red Sox history, and it's the greatest and most interesting and unique teams and players and events and moments in Red Sox history.
And I know that when we were talking about this, you actually make it a bit interactive. You have some quizzes and such to see, because I know, there's a lot of Red Sox buffs around here, but I think that you aim to have something so people can show off a little bit, but also hopefully to challenge some folks. I'm sure you dug up a lot of gems, and you're going to have some stuff that people probably have never heard before.
Maybe I'm going to be imparting a lot of trivia and factual information and interesting facts that people maybe do not know, and then I'm going to have a lot of trivia questions. I usually give about 5 to 7 trivia questions during an event, and I don't want to make them so hard that nobody will know it, but I don't want to make them easy, because I know there's Red Sox Nation is so passionate, and I know there's going to be some really knowledgeable Red Sox fans in the audience here, so I want to make it challenging, yet not impossible.
That sounds like a good time. Have you ever been to any of the concerts or anything in Fenway Park too? Have you? There's
just a lot of ball games. I covered a lot of ball games there. Yeah, I covered playoffs. I covered the regular season games, and it's my favorite park to go to, because it has so much character and so much charm, and it's old school. The thing with some of these new ballparks, they're wonderful new ballparks. I've been to the ones, Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Seattle and so forth, and they're wonderful new ballparks. But there's nothing that matches the old school charm of Fenway Park. And I'm hoping, maybe hoping against hope, that it never gets replaced. If it gets revitalized, wonderful. But I hope Fenway Park lasts as long as it can possibly last.
Oh, it's always fun when you're down in the bowels of the park and you can see how it's grown. They have that timeline, so you can see how the park has changed over time.
Yeah. Well, and it has. Obviously, there have been some, modernizations at Fenway Park, but it still has the Green Monster, and it still has, pesky pole, and it's always gonna be like that, and even in a bad year, which is rare for the Red Sox, and they're having a bad year this year.
Hey, they just had a rough weekend, but they had 3 in a row there, I know, through Friday night.
They're starting to come around. Their pitching staff needs with Chris Sale out and Rodriguez out, and they're going to have to rebuild that pitching staff. But still, and I would assume this year, if there were fans in the stands, they'd still be drawing 30,000 people there every night.
Oh, I'm sure it'd be sellout every time.
Yeah, the loyalty of Red Sox fans. Imagine having gone through, and fans in Cleveland know all about this too, but imagine having gone through.
I apologize.
Yeah. 96 years of not futility, but 96 years of never having celebrated a world championship, and having the loyalty involved there. How many Red Sox fans went their whole life, from birth to death, without having celebrated a world championship, and still were passionate, and that the Red Sox just were beloved to them, and it's just amazing. It's phenomenal.
Do you know anything? So I know that the night of this program, they're going to be actually battling. I just saw they're battling the Orioles, which, as we're recording this, they're 2-2 in the latest series of the Orioles. Do you know anything? Do you have any nuggets about the kind of the history between those two teams for folks that may be watching, joining us for this program, and then using their DVR to watch the rest of the game?
Well, there were a lot of periods of time. In fact, probably most periods of time. Now, the Orioles didn't come into existence until the 50s, but there were a lot of periods of time where the Orioles were a sensational team and the Red Sox were mediocre, and then the other way around. The one era that I know that both teams were pretty strong were in the late 60s and early 70s, but the Orioles had all that great pitching and the Red Sox had all that great hitting, and they battled pretty strongly then. And then a little bit in the 90s too. But there were the times when both teams were lights out, were World Series championship contenders, have been fairly rare since the 1950s.
Well, it certainly is exciting right now, and I'm glad that we can celebrate the Red Sox, and at least we're watching ball games again. I had a bunch of friends who were watching Korean baseball for a while.
Yeah, on ESPN at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Yeah,
So,
you got to really be a baseball fan to do that.
Yeah, well, I got some serious hardcore baseball friends that are serious hardcore fans. So they just
there are certainly a lot of them in Red Sox Nation. I mean, all the way up from to Maine, New Hampshire and Vermont and Rhode Island and Maine and Connecticut, and then the millions of Red Sox fans that are scattered across the country who have.
We got a fair number in New York. We won't mention the team from there, but I do know that there's a big Red Sox Nation presence in New York. Even.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure there's a lot of Red Sox fan clubs everywhere.
Absolutely,
including New York. In fact, when you attend or watch on TV a Red Sox Yankees game from Yankee Stadium.
I'm sorry, I don't know that team.
Oh, that's right. I mentioned it. Oh, sorry, I mentioned it. But you'll hear a smattering of applause and cheering for the Red Sox when they do something well, and
right.
it's very pronounced.
Yeah.
And so and obviously there are a lot of Red Sox fans that travel to the Big Apple, I guess we'll say it, to watch the Red Sox play there. Also.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially in times. Well, yeah, we can even do it today. So the travel restrictions are such that we can go to New York, whereas we can't we can't stop in Rhode Island overnight, but we can go to New York.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I suppose I can understand that, but it's really a strange thing to watch games on television and see these cardboard cutout fans there and this fake
piped-in noise,
noise,
roar of the crowd.
I like it. I mean, I like it better than complete silence. I'm glad that they're doing that to have some kind of atmosphere, baseball atmosphere to it. But it's and you're for a while you kind of get lost in it. Then you're thinking, wait a minute, nobody's really there to make this noise.
I think the players appreciate it too. I think it'd be really weird to be playing in an empty stadium.
I think it took them a while to get used to even the way they're doing it now, but I think that it made it easier for them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Marty, I'm really excited for this program. I'm really glad we can celebrate baseball. We'll be watching in the stands again. It will come. We'll get our time. We just have to stay safe.
I'm looking forward to talking about Cy Young and Babe Ruth before he was shipped off to New York, and Ted Williams and Carl Yastrzemski and Big Papi and Tony Conigliaro. I got all sorts of chapters on individual players, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a really fun and enlightening program.
I'm sure we're going to have a blast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
On Tuesday mornings, October 6th and 13th, we are continuing a 4-part series of programs all about falls prevention and stress management. I recently got an opportunity to talk with Nurse Debbie Linden-Toomey about this series, and I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I'm talking today with Debbie Toomey, who is the coordinator of the Tufts Medical Center Injury Prevention Program, and is going to be doing a program for us here at the library, live on Zoom, on YouTube and Facebook, October 6th and October 13th at 10 o'clock. Debbie, thank you so much for joining me out here and talking to me today. I'm really glad that we can do this program together.
It's an evidence-informed program. And I'm working on another organization to make it evidence-based. And basically that means, what does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean, evidence-based? That sounds so fancy. It just means that evidence-based means it's research proven. So in creating this program, which is basically it's a falls prevention program and also a program that motivates the aging population to continue to move, to continue to learn, to be a lifelong learner, and how that can make a big difference in the way we live our life, the way we communicate with others, the way we take care of ourselves. So evidence.
The aging population really does talk about, I think you mean people that are kind of at the advanced stages of aging. Hopefully we're all aging, otherwise what are we doing?
Yeah.
but this does, these sound like tips that would be great for everybody to learn.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, this is great for the caregivers, the people who consider themselves in the sandwich generation, like myself. I'm a nurse, injury prevention coordinator, but also I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I have 3 boys, and also I have parents who are really young at heart and active. So I'm in that sandwich generation, but still can benefit from the information that I will be sharing. So people 50 and up, I would say, would benefit. Again, just going back to the evidence base. So a lot of the information that I'll be sharing that I created, that I added to the program, are from the research. So that way, you know that it's legitimate information.
So you're not just making this stuff up. This is actually based on looking at a lot of different people and what has actually been proven to work.
Yes. So a lot of information from the CDC and also the National Council of Aging.
So Debbie, I'm curious, obviously the program is going to focus on what you just said and helping people learn how to age strong. Something that I wouldn't expect that you're going to cover a lot, but maybe really interesting to know is a little bit more about you and how you got to be interested and even how you became a nurse and became the coordinator of injury prevention at Tufts Medical Center. Help us get to know you a little bit. How long have you been a nurse for?
Oh my gosh, I've been a nurse. I'm going on over 30 years now.
Get out.
Yes, I'm out. Yeah, so I graduated. I went to
when you were like 3, I guess.
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? I was born in the Philippines, but basically grew up in Quincy.
Okay.
I've been here since I was 9 years old and went through the Quincy Public School system.
Right.
Loved going to the Thomas Crane Public Library and Quincy Square and all that. So, and currently still live in Quincy. So my heart belongs here in Quincy. And I love to be able to share any type of programs that can, it's in alignment with health and wellness. I became a nurse because I didn't know back then when I was little, but one of my core main values is helping people feel better. Mm-hmm. And for me, that translated into being a nurse. And graduated from North Quincy High School, went to UMass Boston for nursing. Right before graduation, I got a job at Tufts Medical Center. So I've been there. I pretty much grew up there at Tufts Medical Center.
Wow, that's quite a story. That's really rich. So you were like frontline working in one of the departments, I assume, for a bit before you became the injury prevention coordinator? Or? Pretty
much. I spent a lot of my careers working in the adult side, medical surgery, and then learned and also took care of and got trained in taking care of cancer patients, orthopedic patients, cardiac patients, and then I transferred to the anesthesia department, and now I'm in the trauma department. So Tufts Medical Center
is a trauma 1 center. You see some really serious trauma at Tufts.
Yes, that's right. So it's a level 1 trauma center, and basically just like Boston Medical Center, Brigham Women, Beth Israel, Mass General, all the key Boston hospitals are level 1 trauma centers. And then there's level 2, level 3.
Car crashes, if there's a complicated, any kind of complicated injury, whether it's a fall, whether it's a violent attack, I don't know the majority of car accidents. And
gunshot wounds, fatal car accidents, a lot of the really complex admissions or, accidents. That the suburbs, the suburban hospitals are not able to take care of. They transfer them to the bigger hospitals like Tufts Medical Center.
And I'm sure in doing that work, you had to witness situations where people had that significant trauma that could potentially have been prevented if they had taken more attention to how to increase their strength or maintain their strength as they were aging. So I assume that was kind of the bridge from that work and saying, wait, how do we go about not just, putting on Band-Aids and very, very complicated Band-Aids to actually preventing the injury in the first place?
Exactly. So it was one of the key takeaways that I learned being a nurse and taking care of hundreds, thousands of patients is how important prevention is. How important it is, just like, starting, the forest fire, Smokey the Bear, it's just so...
Only you, that's right.
That's right, in the hat, right? But prevention is just such an important element, and there's really not too much funding in that, nationwide. So it's so important to really put that in the forefront of your thinking, how important it is to think about what you're doing and also know the resources that's available, because there's so many free resources, really amazing free resources out there to educate everybody on how to make healthier and safer choices, right?
And that's why I'm really glad that we at the library can help with that. We love providing, everything we do is for free, and our specialty is connecting people to resources. So thank you so much for bringing this, Debbie.
Session 3 is helping the person become more of a stronger advocate for themselves when they're in front of the white coats, the white coat syndrome, right?
The
Like the
clipboards,
doctors.
yeah.
The pharmacists. Sometimes we get, we have things that we want to go over with them, but when we go there, when we finally get there, we get so intimidated sometimes, and all we do is just say yep. So giving them information, giving people information, basic information that can help them jog their memory when they're there, or just kind of go over some basic questions, so that way the doctor knows that the person who is in front of them has given them as much information as they can. Because you know what, nurses and doctors, we don't read minds.
What?
We want to hear from you. We want to know how you're doing. Don't be shy. Please let us know so we can help you best. And then session 4 is a strong plan. So based on what you experienced the last 3 weeks, which ones do you think you might want to start using for the next 30 days maybe, or for the next week? So that way you'll be able to have a stronger idea of what to do after the program. It's not a program that I hope people say, oh, that was nice, and then they forget about it.
Great.
So
Well, that sounds like it's going to be a wonderful experience. And I hope lots of folks were able to tune in, and we will be recording them and sharing them in the future, so that people who aren't able to do it live can hopefully benefit as well. So I'm really excited to be doing this together. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. And the only thing I would ask for people to do is just make sure they have a chair when they're doing the program. So that way, you participate as much as you can, but know your body, have the chair available, so that way if you want to participate and just do the movements sitting down, do that.
So doing this on a phone on a stand-up paddleboard is not recommended.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, not this time. Find a safe, comfortable place, and just make sure that you listen, and as you explain, it's recorded, so don't feel like you have to take so much notes. Just take in what you can, because how I explain things and what I go over, I can assure you, you already know. It's just me trying to remind you of certain things.
And if you think you know this can also just kind of help reinforce what you know and make sure that you're taking the best care you can of yourself.
Yeah.
Great. Debbie, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this. And I will be introducing each program just to kick everything off and say hello. So I'm looking forward to seeing folks who come and participate.
I'm talking today with our friends Ed Fitzgerald and Alexandra Elliott with the Quincy Historical Society. They will be presenting a program with us on a social history of Howard Johnson advertisements, happening here at the library's Zoom account on Tuesday evening, October 6th, starting at 7 p.m. It will also be, in addition to being on Zoom, we'll have it on our YouTube and Facebook pages. So I hope you'll come out and enjoy a fabulous evening thinking about the legacy of Howard Johnson's, born here in Quincy, Massachusetts. I look forward to seeing you there, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Ed, Lexi, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so grateful that we're able to do the program together. And this is going to be an especially fun one. We're talking about Howard Johnson's, a Quincy original.
Yeah, we are indeed. Yeah, so this will be fun.
Absolutely. So do you remember the first time, what's your earliest memory? I guess I'll ask both of you. And we'll start with you, Ed. Ed, what's your first memory of Howard Johnson's? Let's get personal.
Well, the joke would be that I went there in 1925 to get the ice cream cone, but not quite that
No,
Not
I don't
quite
think
that
so.
far back, but it's pretty darn far back, given. So I can't. I honestly, I have a cluster of memories from my early childhood, which coincided sort of with the height of the Howard Johnson's phenomenon. And I couldn't tell you what the earliest one is, but I can remember being in the fancy downstairs restaurant at Granite Trust, and certainly I can remember being at all sorts of the orange and aqua ones all over, and really all through. It's part of my life, basically.
Wow. And Alexandra, how about you? When do you remember first becoming aware of the institution?
Well, so I'm going to date myself slightly, but in a very different way. I was born after Howard Johnson's was not really a thing anymore. There were still a couple around, mostly the old franchise associations, and I think I remember seeing the one that was up in Maine, because I used to go up to Maine with my parents a lot, but I've never actually been to a Howard Johnson's, but I do have memories of going to a spin-off restaurant that was owned by the Howard Johnson's Corporation called the Ground Round, specifically. Specific memories of going inside and, it's sort of being a regular sports bar, but I remember the peanut shells all over the floor.
Was that a signature Ground Round?
That was a signature of the Ground Round, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So that's fascinating. I hadn't thought about the Ground Round in a long time. I remember stories, actually. I remember hearing going, I remember actually being in a car once, driving to like a lake. We were towing a boat behind us, and I was being told all about this great place I had to go because you could throw your peanut shells in the ground. I had this very distinct, I was pretty young at the time, and I was just so excited that I could do such a thing, and had to go explore it. It was definitely way before I was going to bars. Wow, I think Howard Johnson's, my memory of Howard Johnson's is as a hotel and, the lodges that they had driving across. I grew up out west, and so I think it was much more an interstate kind of phenomenon in a place where you could tuck in for a quick meal. But I know they had a very different experience and a very different existence here. Ed, I'm jealous of the memory in the Granite Trust building. That's really neat. That had to
It's
be
pretty vague. I was, I didn't exactly go there. I got kind of taken there.
You were taken there, maybe in a high chair, yes.
Exactly. Well, or maybe a little bit more than that. But,
Wow.
but it's, yeah, it's actually, I've got, I still am trying to envision it because I have this, it's one of those childhood memories, which I think for particularly people of my generation, probably a generation behind me, have those where it's all kind of there, and you're saying, was that real, or is that kind of my imagination playing with me? So he gets into your head if you're of a certain age, for sure.
For sure, yeah. And what's an original memory? I've seen all sorts of stories on memory creation. So
Yeah.
I was with somebody who said actually that we remember things better when we don't take a picture of them, because we don't have that crux, and we form our own memories rather than cementing it in some distinct fraction of time.
Yeah.
So. But of course, what we're talking about in this program is going to be looking at a social history as portrayed through their advertising, which is a whole different, and this is like how they want us to think about them, whether they met up to that image or not.
Yeah.
We must have quite a collection of ads since they were such a native Quincy company. How did we, tell me about the collection that we have.
We probably have, if we can brag and boast a little bit, we probably have one of the largest collections on hand about Howard Johnson's ephemera, be that menus and advertisements and various other pieces. We have quite a lot, and so their they were quite prolific in terms of especially their paper advertisement. And so we have, all numbers of either people just cutting pieces out of newspapers or magazines to actual prints and things that were being sent out to the restaurants to help them with promotional advertisements just in the restaurants as well. So we have quite a lot, and we're definitely going to be using this as an opportunity to showcase some of the images and items that you don't get to see very much. if you're not, a Hojo's super fan, and even if you are, you're probably going to see something new.
How did do either of you know how we actually came to accumulate these? Is there an interesting story? Did they like just open up the back of a warehouse and say, here, take all this paper? Or how did we get
Kind
it?
of. No. Kind of. No, it's somewhat, it's a little bit better than that, but it's a combination of a few things. So obviously the location in Quincy and how much of the business, even throughout its history, was based here has contributed to that. But in particular, there was an organization called Franchise Associates, which was operating after the Howard B. Johnson had sold the company in the 1980s. Made up largely of former executives of the company who were at that point kind of buying the brand back to try and keep the actual project going. So they, even as they were operating, gave a lot of stuff to the Historical Society, and then as that process began to kind of wind itself down, we became the repository for them. But then from multiple other sources, I mean, just people around town giving us stuff. We've gotten stuff from Howard B. himself. We do have to acknowledge that he has given us a very generous grant to help document and do programs on the history of the company and
A sense of their own legacy.
in a sense of their own. Yeah, exactly. So we've
Howard,
gotten it from a
he's
whole
not
bunch of
still
sources.
with us, is he? Howard B., I assume.
Yes, he is.
He is.
Yeah,
Well, then I apologize if he's watching today. The story of my demise has been greatly exaggerated, or whatever the proper quote is there.
Yeah.
That's great, and you have a relationship with him too.
Part of his donation, that was what went towards an exhibit that is actually still on at the Academy. Unfortunately, obviously, since we're closed, we're not able to display it, but the exhibit that we put on I think in 2017 it opened, for a special exhibit about Howard Johnson. That was largely thanks to him that we were able to actually get that done, and we're able to do that.
Well, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to give too much away because I want people to come and appreciate it and see the unveiling. I wonder if is there anything else you'd like to share about this before? Because I have some other thoughts about other entities and about the collection because, maybe ideas for future things. But I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to share about this program and Howard Johnson's before I take flights of faith.
Only that in addition to the print advertising, which we'll be focusing on, and the kind of manufacture of the brand with the 28 flavors and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We will have some video. Once again, we'll have some video because one of the things we also inherited were some commercials from the 60s and 70s primarily. So there'll be a couple of surprises in there.
So that'll be a fabulous stroll back for folks who maybe saw them originally, and it'll be just a fascinating lens on what it was like to live and appreciate, a Quincy treasure at that time too.
Yeah.
There are some pretty fun ones in that collection too. We've been watching through them and laughing as we do our research.
It's got to be hard to choose, and I'm sure you could fill way more than an hour, 90 minutes with all this material. So how are you choosing? What are you leaving on the cutting room floor? Any nuggets that I assume you probably haven't made the final choice yet?
Correct. Yeah. No, we're currently going through that debate about what exactly to include. But I think there's some that aren't quite as relevant, or they just have. Or maybe they're already on YouTube, so people may have already stumbled across them. So some of those might not make it in, or ones that we know that people have seen a million times before if they really like Howard Johnson's. There's a couple in there though that have some either for people who are watching TV or watching theater or watching the movies during this period. They might recognize some faces. You have some kind of semi-famous A actors, B actors in there. And then one that I won't say exactly what it is, but Ed and I very affectionately refer to it as the OSHA violation.
Yes, I think we've talked about that one before.
Yes, yeah.
Did you find any others that were particularly shocking? We don't have to give away what the shock was, but I imagine that our treatment of people from just our portrayal of people from different groups, people of different natures. I mean, usually advertisers stay away from that, but there could be some I don't know, just in a lens about some cultural stereotypes or norms that we don't share today. I don't know if that's something.
I don't know in the positive sense that you see that. I think you do see, one of the things you can see is really how much advertising has changed in many respects. Really, even maybe within the last 10 years. And yeah, I think we will touch on that in the program.
Well, I guess are there any other local, when I think of other local businesses, Dunkin' Donuts is the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Do you have a similar collection of Dunkin' Donuts historical stuff? Or is that something we need to solicit Mr. Donut to? I don't think there, while there's a Mr. Johnson, there's not a Mr. Donut. But is there a local person that we should be appealing to? Maybe look under this program and realize they should be donating their history.
We do not have as strong a collection on Dunkin' Donuts as we do on Johnson. In fairness, the company is not quite as strongly tied to Quincy as Johnson was, in that this was the corporate headquarters for years and years and years for Johnson. But they have been cooperative. Particularly, they have been cooperative over the years, and we are eternally hopeful that yes, people will come up with their Dunkin' Donuts memorabilia. We've got some, but we could use more. Okay. If anybody has anything actually from the original name of Dunkin' Donuts, when it was called the Open Kettle, that would be a real prize. I have not seen anything anywhere. I even scrolled through at the glorious collection of the Patriot Ledger at the Thomas Crane Library, just looking for an ad for the Open Kettle one time, and I just have not been able to find anything. So anyway, special plea.
Put an appeal. Maybe we include a little bit of this in this interview that we post, or maybe just when we're live in the program, we could say, kind of like, if you've enjoyed this and you have a garage full of treasures for some other local, Quincy interest, please, think of us. Yeah. Think of the Historical Society. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to close this conversation. Is there anything else happening that you've been working on at the Historical Society that you would like to tell people about? I think this is super exciting. We've done some great programs, in the last few months. We've talked about the pandemic in 1918. We've talked about the challenge that this country faced for a long time with the yellow fever. Now we're lightening things up a bit and enjoying some ice cream stories and looking at advertising. What I'm really grateful. I think we can all use it. We should all enjoy some ice cream these days and some of these memories. Are there other pieces that you're working on that you'd like to make sure people are aware of?
So we're sort of delving back into the more serious subjects again, but so this year, 2020, is the 250th anniversary, or the start of the official Revolution 250 memorials, celebrations, commemorations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now, 250 years ago, that's 1770. And in March of 1770, you have an event known as the Boston Massacre. Now, in October and November of 1770, you have the anniversary of the trials, or 2020, you have the anniversary of those trials. Now, it is thanks to a very good book written by David McCullough and a pretty famous HBO series called John Adams at this point.
I've heard of that one before.
Yeah, for most people, a lot of people in Quincy have heard of that one at this point. So it has become fairly well known that John Adams was one of the lawyers who actually represented the soldiers during that particular trial. Now, it's slightly less well known that another Quincy boy also, this being Josiah Quincy Jr., also represented the soldiers, and that his brother Samuel was also representing the prosecution, so was prosecuting the soldiers. So there's a lot of ties to Quincy in the story. So I'm going to be working on a blog post for our the Historical Society's blog that is called that is the Quincy History blog, in fact. I'm going to be looking into some of, as I like to say, some of the cultural echoes, because it is a discussion. In that event, the discussions around it, the debate that was going on during that trial and in the town surrounding, there are a lot of echoes to today. and as well as throughout all of American history. A lot of the debate and discussion continues on, and it's one of the oldest that our country has, so I find that personally very fascinating.
Well, I'm glad that you said this is the beginning of the start of recognition. So maybe we can, move from a blog post to something larger and share that in another forum like this too, if that's a possibility. That sounds certainly like rich material. So, well, Ed, Alexander, it is always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to talking about Howard Johnson together and the road in front of us and all the
Thanks for inviting us to do it.
Well, that was my conversation with Ed Fitzgerald and Alexandra Elliott from the Quincy Historical Society. They will be presenting a program on the social history of Howard Johnson ads that we'll be hosting here on Zoom. You can find us, just go out to the library's webpage and you can find the link to the Zoom account, or you can join us on our YouTube and Facebook pages on Tuesday evening, October 6th, starting at 7 o'clock. I look forward to seeing you then. Colin McCullough is returning for more healthy cooking classes, co-sponsored by the Boston Vegetarian Society. Learn how to make delicious whole food soup on October 8th and mark your calendars for November 12th and December 10th for more yummy cooking classes. These are also sponsored by the Friends of the Thomas Crane Library. So I'm talking today with Colin McCullough, who is going to be joining us on October 8th at 7 o'clock to talk about whole food soups. We'll be doing it here on Zoom. We'll also be streaming it live on our YouTube and Facebook channels. This program is brought to us by the Friends of the Thomas Crane Library, and we're doing it in partnership with the Boston Vegetarian Society. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support. I hope you enjoyed Colin and my conversation. So, Colin, thank you so much for joining me again today. I am really excited that we're going to be doing more cooking classes. We've had some really fun classes so far. How have you been? We are now, moving into the fall. You and I are talking today on the first day of fall, which is super exciting.
Yeah, it's good. The classes have been great. We did a bunch of classes before that were kind of centered around, summer eating and using some of that produce up and, also some of the pantry stuff up. But now as we move into fall, then there's some other classes that I usually teach that are a little bit more fall appropriate and holiday appropriate. So we'll dive into those.
Definitely good to eat with the seasons. Focus on, the flavors and the whatever we can get that's fresh. I know that lately I've been enjoying, it seems like it's been an amazing bumper crop of tomatoes lately.
Oh, yeah.
I find when it comes to tomato season, like I try to remember every time it's tomato season how good they are and promise myself that I will not be tempted come April or March when there's a ripe, red looking tomato that doesn't taste anything like you get it when it's fresh off the vine. It's such a different fruit.
Yeah.
Have you found any good any good finds at markets or anything recently? Any super exciting produce that you've enjoyed?
Well, I joined I signed up for the Misfits produce.
Oh,
so
I've heard about that. That's cool.
Yeah, we get the box every week, and some of it looks kind of funky and kind of fun, but I make a lot of different sauces and bowl meals and things. So whatever I get, I get stuff in the box and. Just like a CSA, the community supported agriculture.
Yeah.
If you belong to a farm like that, then, you tend to get produce and say, what is that? What do I do with that? Well, it's great in a bowl meal, just make a good sauce, pour it over it, and there you go. There's dinner.
In our family, we've come to kind of the conclusion that when in doubt, roast it. We got a kohlrabi the other day. We also got a box of produce from a CSA, and I've had some good kohlrabi salads, but we ended up Jackie roasted it and my wife and it was really good. I was surprised. Just anything you put a nice little roast, a little brown on there, and yeah, it's delicious.
Sure.
It brings out the sugars and makes it a little sweeter. It's really good. Mm-hmm. Not so good if you're trying to eat raw. That doesn't work for you. But we're not trying to eat raw.
Yeah.
But I know sometimes I also had a whole bunch of turnips that showed up in our drawer. And they were these gorgeous white turnips. I guess I was reading about them. There's all these different varieties of turnips, which I wasn't even aware. I guess a rutabaga is even a turnip. Mm-hmm. But I ended up mashing them with some other potatoes and did a mashed potato and turnip dish that turned out really nice.
Yeah. Well, the culprit I always used to get with the CSA was kale, just kale every week, you know.
Yeah, you're not a big fan of kale, I know.
Well, I love it in a bowl meal or something like that, just not in a smoothie. But
Okay, yeah.
that's my personal preference. But you know, we get this, you know, kale in the box every week, you know, when it's too cold for everything else to grow. But kale,
Right.
can't
Yep.
stop the kale, keeps on coming. So
I've been looking. I always thought it would be fun to write that cookbook that was like the Urban Forager cookbook, and it was all about like looking for the flower boxes that are planted with purple kale, because you can find those in the middle of January, and like, you know, teaching people how you could eat off of those.
sure.
I don't know what else you would eat. It would probably be a pretty basic existence, but you know, beat starving.
Mhm.
Well, I know that the last class that we did was smoothies that taste like Girl Scout cookies, and I have to ask: have you had any more insights? Have you had any more forays into the Girl Scout cookie world?
Oh, actually, I am. It's all finished,
No.
and I have the design all ready to go, and I'm
Ooh.
actually going to be uploading it pretty soon to Amazon and making it available. I have a class that I'm doing. The soups class that we're going to be doing coming up. I'm doing that for Chef AJ out in California. She's a big vegan chef and author, and big in the vegan world. And so she's having me on her show in November and on YouTube. And so I told her I'm going to be doing this Girl Scout cookie smoothie book. And so that's my deadline. It has to be done and uploaded by the time I'm on that show. So got to give myself a deadline to work against. So
That's
it'll
really
be done
exciting.
by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they setting you up with like special equipment, or are you going to be doing it from your kitchen for Chef AJ too, just like we've been enjoying it?
Oh, just like we do here.
Just like
Yeah.
this. Right on. I do love, you know, I think your kitchen, it may drive you crazy at times. I think any of us who've worked in small kitchens know that feeling, but I really, you know, respect, and I love showing people, hey, you know, if Colin can do such amazing food in this space, imagine what you can do. So maybe, you know, maybe we have some college students that are hanging out and living in quarantine in dorm rooms with just a hot plate. That could be a little challenging. I remember those days, but
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, as long as I have a little bit of room for my Vitamix and my food processor, I got the air fryer over there, you know, the essentials, and I can do everything else.
some spoons and chopsticks, and what more do you need? Yeah. So, Colin, our October program, we're going to be talking about healthy soups, which, as we're talking about all these great ways, you know, what to do with produce, what do you do with those weird vegetables? You can roast them, but you can also follow the stone soup recipe. But we're not going to be making stone soup, are we? What are you thinking about showing us?
Yeah, stone soup doesn't work so well in a Vitamix. You know, it can blend up just about everything, but rocks not so well. So this whole food soups class that I do, it uses a lot of, as the name says, lots of different fresh vegetables. You know, trying to make whole food versions of different soups. So, you know, one of the soups that I do in this class is a fresh creamy tomato soup. And, you know, boy, you can tell the difference between, you know, those fresh tomatoes, like you said. You know, it's tomato season right now. You got them everywhere. You know,
soup's a great way to use up a whole bunch of tomatoes. That's a really good idea.
It is. And, you know, if you can put it in a blender and, you know, it blends in the seeds and the skin and everything. So, you know, instead of straining all that stuff out, that stuff takes a lot of extra time. Blend it in, you know.
So you don't have to take all the liquid out. I know I've spent time making sauces and such where I'm cutting open every tomato and scooping out the seeds so that I don't get all that water. You don't worry about that, huh? You just drop it all in the Vitamix?
Well, you know, I tell everybody I'm a very lazy cook. So, you know, it just goes in the blender, you know,
Nice.
Get the machine does all the work and it blends it right in. But, you know, people, when I do this class, you know, live in libraries and people get to taste it, then, you know, people are always surprised by this one, at how much different it tastes than, you know, your average canned tomato soup that you just open up the can and pour it out. You know, who knows how long that soup has been on the shelf. If you have that, you know, that fresh tomato soup, creamy tomato soup, nothing beats it. It tastes so good.
Well, I'm very excited to learn how you do that one. So, What other kind of soups are you thinking about?
I usually do a Lebanese red lentil soup, which is another one that Vitamix does most of the work. This is one where, when I would come home and I'd have to come up with something quick for the boys, my kids, to be able to have something. I have the pressure cooker. I just blend everything, pour it in there, and cooks for a little while, and it's so good. It's delicious. So there's that one, and then we'll also be doing Thai coconut soup. Mm-hmm.
Well, I cannot wait. I hope everybody make sure we'll be sharing the recipes, and will you be able to share those recipes with us ahead of time? We can make it so that if folks want to get the ingredients and kind of study up. There may be a couple special ingredients, or is it all pretty much for all these soups? Are there things you can just find in any supermarket you're going to?
For the most part, they're ingredients that you'd find at any supermarket. There may be a few ingredients that I would include that might be more specialty ingredients, but easily available online. You can buy it at Whole Foods, things like that. So they're still pretty easy to get.
Well, I cannot wait. I love a good soup, and maybe we can talk about some of our favorite breads to have with soups, because there's nothing about that bread soup combo that just hits the spot on a cold night.
Or the bread bowl, right? Just have the soup in the bread bowl.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, I remember doing like a creamy broccoli soup in a bread bowl that definitely hits the spot.
That's comfort food.
It sure is. So I hope you enjoyed my conversation just now with Colin. We will be joined by Colin on October 8th to talk about Whole Foods soups at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much to the Friends of the Library for making this happen, and to the Boston Vegetarian Society for your support. I hope you enjoy my conversation today with Dr. Christoph Strobel. He will be presenting here with us live on Zoom and being simulcast to our YouTube and Facebook pages. It will happen. This program is on Tuesday, October 13th, starting at 7 p.m., all about the legacies of 1620 and the Mayflower, the Native Americans of New England. It's a real pleasure to have you talk to us remotely by Zoom, and looking forward to our program together.
Thanks so much for having me, Clayton.
Of course. I was so excited to hear that you're doing this program and to get introduced and connected with you. So for folks who are curious what they're tuning into, we are going to be talking, and you're going to be presenting a program all about the history of Native Americans, specifically Native Americans here in New England. We're obviously here in 2020, 400 years after 1620, which is frequently seen, and rightly so, as a touch point between Native American and European histories with the arrival of the Pilgrims here. But before we jump into exactly what we'll be talking about, with that as a pretext, Christoph, how did you get interested in studying Native American history? You don't look, unless I'm mistaken, that you have Native American heritage yourself. So.
No, I don't. In fact, I'm an immigrant from Europe, and I studied American history here. I had a Native American friend in college, and she took me to her reservation, and so I was exposed a lot to the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois culture, and specifically the Salamanca community in New York, which is a Seneca community. And so this was kind of my segue into this type of history. Most of my serious academic work, I have done some work on immigration history, but also really my main interest is in sort of the impact of colonization on indigenous people. So I very much look at sort of the impact of Europeans on Native people. That said, when you look at these 200-300 years of colonial history, in order to understand this, you need to understand the ancient history that happened before 1620 and even 1492, because without that understanding of what indigenous societies looked like then, you don't understand the colonial period. And I also, in my teaching and also in my research, I do feel that as historians, we cannot just get stuck in the colonial period. And this was, in fact, the thing that my mentor, Neil Salisbury at Smith College, always told me is, like, you got to make sure that you also look bring it up to the present. And so in my teaching, but also with the last project I was working on, I was really eager to bring the history of Native peoples in New England up to the present and sort
I
of.
think that's really important. I mean, so often people like to think about these, you know, often romanticized ideals or images of what they think Native Americans are, without realizing that we are living with Native American people still today, and that they, you know, they didn't all die. You know, all our ancestors have died, but we are still living with the, you know, with that history. So I'm glad you're doing that. That's a really important perspective.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the main things that the talk and the following discussion, I hope, will emphasize too.
So, I mean, I know that there's a very complex history here, and I don't want to get into it too much, but, you know, I'm just curious, how do you do this work? I mean, I don't think there's a lot of written records from history pre, you know, 1400s or 1600s, or, you know, when does the written history start? How do you actually, as a historian, operate in this, with this kind of material?
You become a cop-out, and you you rely on the work of others. So I studied a lot of archaeology for this project, but I also think it is important to look at indigenous histories, and that are sometimes described as oral traditions or oral histories. And so, as with my work with immigrant communities, that is an important component too. You talk to people, and you get different perspectives, and you look at the areas that some people describe as folklore and legends, and keep an open mind, trying to bring the archaeological record together, indigenous perspectives, and those kinds of sources, and try to interpret them. And there's a lot of interpretation going on in this work, because there's a lot that we don't know. And as I have become older and coming into my late 40s now, I have become also more accepting with the fact that the more I learn, the dumber I get.
The more we realize we don't know. Yeah.
Yes. And maybe the more I become aware of my ignorance is a better way of phrasing it.
Have you studied, so speaking of oral, and do you have a lot of local connections? Have you traveled and have a lot of community connections?
For this project, it was hard because the connections with people you have would then maybe have skewed it towards certain groups, but would have neglected others. And so I try to really be as fair throughout with the approaches and the sources, and really try to bring sort of a syncretic regional history together. So whereas when you work on the history of a specific community, this approach definitely would make a lot of sense, and in fact is probably the only way to write the history of a specific community. With this, I was a little bit reluctant to then just favor certain groups and certain voices in the narrative.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. When you're dealing with so much, you know, there's so many peoples, and what you described there about being respectful of, you know, kind of the complexities, the relationship between all these people. I just imagine it sounds, the more you describe it, it sounds immensely difficult, especially when you think about the materials you have available. Have there been any great surprises as you've been doing that you've unearthed that said, this is such an amazing, you know, insight, or, you know, what have been some of the gems that have stood out as you've been doing this work?
To me, I'm always amazed by my own ignorance with this project, because, and especially with the areas that I didn't know, or there's certain assumptions that you have. This is how it works in terms of federal policy in the United States, but then New England has its very own history in that is in a sense very separate from what is going on in the United States. And just give you an example, that in Massachusetts, tribes were terminated around the Civil War era and the Reconstruction era.
What do you
mean
terminated? Like
termination means in this context that state governments pretty much said, okay, you are Native American people no longer. We terminate your status as communities, and privatized the reservation lands, took away a lot of the reservation lands, and that is then pretty much told Narragansett, Mashpee, Wampanoags, Aquinnah, etc., you are no longer Indians or Native American, Indians or Native Americans. And here we are. And so
And
it's
that was
this,
a time when only white men, I assume, could vote. So that meant they went from having any autonomy and limited autonomy in their own spaces to having absolutely nothing.
it's complicated because some of the Native Americans actually get the right to vote through these policy decisions. But it's also clear that the Native communities, in most instances, did not want the autonomy, but rather wanted their communities to be preserved because it gave them local control over education. And most New England Native communities, at least in southern New England, but also in northern New England, had very functioning school systems because of the Constitution. And the only way that Native Americans show up in the Constitution is non-taxed. So there was tax protection. So Native communities didn't have to be paying for their land. There was a protection, better mechanisms that indigenous people came up to protect their private land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of these systems became unraveled, and it became challenging for Native people to continue in the survival of their communities, but they did. And it's to the great qualities of many Native American activists and the perseverance of these communities that they have survived into the 20th century, and through various legal acts and political lobbying, many Native American communities in New England are now federally recognized again or are state recognized. But for many Native American communities, this also means, well, why is it the government that gets to tell us whether we're Native Americans or not? So you also have still a lot of communities that identify as indigenous, but neither state governments or federal governments say they are indigenous. And so this becomes another political issue. And so this is all a learning, and I was aware of some of these things, but doing more and more research really focused me into learning even more about this. And yeah.
So we were talking earlier about language, and as you're talking about a self-identity and kind of group identity, I know the language is frequently part of that identity. How many, are there a lot of indigenous languages that are persisting as well in all this? I'm just kind of curious as an aside to this because that would seem to me as a very natural way for people to say, oh, of course we're Native, because look at this language that's unique from all these other people.
Yeah, and this is part of this history too, is that along with a lot of other traditions and the impact of colonization and living in a mainstream society, that for indigenous people, there are still efforts at indigenous language preservation. But again, it's an uphill battle, and there's a reason why a lot of indigenous languages are getting lost or our communities are really working hard to keep them going. And this is certainly a reality in most New England communities.
Have you studied many Native American languages yourself? Or do you have much exposure? I'm sure it's
sort of
incredibly difficult and another field altogether, but I'm just...
Yeah, I do a little bit of the linguistic work, but again, for this project, because it was so syncretic and it draws from so many communities, I didn't include this type of work in the work because you don't want to have one group feel that they're already neglected towards another. And so I really try to be as non-group partisan as possible.
In these very partisan days, I think that's very admirable, and what we can do both to kind of emulate how do we increase our understanding while understanding all the members of our community and our complex histories. As we close, I'm sure that you'll touch on this in the program. Yeah. Go ahead, Christoph. Yeah.
Maybe also one thing to add, the point of me writing this book and the reason why I go out to give these public talks is they're not really intended for Indigenous American audiences, and I'm not telling Indigenous Americans what their history is in a particular community, but really the way I look at these types of talk is to give people in mainstream New England, Boston area, Quincy, and other places, sort of an understanding and a little bit of an idea within an hour and a half program, right? To educate the public a little bit. This is what has happened in the last 500, 600, 700 years. And this is what you need to know about. In a sense, it's the idiot's guide to Native American history, and I am your idiot guide. So
we're not appropriating anybody's history. I think that's a really good point. We're not trying to pretend to be experts in somebody else or make this our own history, but we are just trying to study it and learn it. So
yes, and also in many impacts, this is what colonial processes and how mainstream societies processes, as with the policies of termination. This is the type of impact these policies have had on Indigenous people.
Well, I think that sounds like a very healthy and the perspective and the action that we can take. So I appreciate the spirit in which you're doing this. I really appreciate the knowledge that you're sharing with us. And I hope we'll get lots of people tuning in so that we can all increase our knowledge and try to find some better understanding from history about how we can apply it today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to it too.
Hope you've enjoyed my conversation just now with Dr. Christoph Strobel. He will be presenting for us here live by Zoom and on YouTube and Facebook on Tuesday evening, October 13th, starting at 7 o'clock. He'll be talking all about the legacies of 1620 and the Mayflower, and specifically about the Native Americans of New England.
Talking today with Marty Gitlin. He is the author of A Celebration of Animation, the 100 Greatest Cartoon Characters in Television History. And he'll be presenting a program to tell us all about this book and the characters within it on Wednesday evening, October 21st, starting at 7 o'clock. Cartoons can bring so much joy. It's an amazing amount of work. There's so much labor involved, but there's something that's just so playful about them. Do you remember when you first fell in love with cartoons? I assume you have a love of cartoons, otherwise you wouldn't write a book.
I think I might have fallen in love with cartoons before my memory would allow me to remember when I fell in love with cartoons.
Fair enough.
Because I was watching them. But Saturday mornings was really the time for me. I would have my big bowl of cereal in front of me on Saturday mornings. And I usually like to sleep in on the weekends, school days and all. But on Saturday mornings was different. It was 8 in the morning. And I watched 4 hours of cartoons from 8 to noon, because that was when, and I'm old, I'm 63 years old. I don't know if people remember this, but there were only 3 channels at that time, so ABC, NBC, and CBS, and they had 4 hours of cartoons. I watched 2 hours of Warner Brothers, Merry Melodies and all the great Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and all my favorites. Yosemite Sam happens to be my very favorite cartoon character of all time. And there was an hour of Hanna-Barbera, and I loved, Magilla Gorilla and Yogi Bear. And I just...
He-Man was later. When did He-Man come around?
Oh, He-Man was fairly early at that time. But when and I'll explain what happened. I have a book out, and the program's based on a book called A Celebration of Animation, the 100 Greatest Cartoon Characters in Television History. We're the only authors to rank the greatest cartoon characters of all time. Now, when I was a kid, and then when I was older and had my kids, I really only watched and really loved funny cartoons. So when we wrote this book, I wrote all the entries for the funny cartoon characters, and my co-author, his name is Joe Wose. He's the resident cartoonist for the Charles Schulz Museum in Santa Rosa, California. He's one of the foremost experts. He's one of the foremost experts of cartoon characters in the country. But anyway, he wrote all the superheroes and serious and evil cartoon characters, the entries for those. So we were able to put the best use of our knowledge to use. And so I didn't really watch He-Man specifically, and I didn't really watch a lot of the superhero characters and cartoons. I watched the funny ones. And so that's those are the ones I'm an expert at, and those are the ones that I wrote about in our book.
I'm just trying to think. So we should specify we're talking about animated cartoons. We're not talking about the Sunday comic strips, because when I started thinking, I was immediately going in my brain and thinking of non-serious. I'm thinking about Opus, and I'm thinking about the serious ones as a contrast. I was thinking about Opus and Doonesbury, but those were never animated. We're talking about really the painstaking work of all the cells. This was all done by hand and painted once upon a time.
Exactly, and there were characters that we had to decide whether we would actually include them in the book because they were originally comic strip characters, like the Peanuts characters, Snoopy and Charlie Brown and Lucy. Well, these characters were originally comic strip characters, and we had to decide whether we were going to include them in the book. But they became so famous as animated characters as well, with all the holiday specials and everything, that we decided to include them in the book. In fact, we have Snoopy ranked number 6 among our top
spoiler
of all time. It's really, because he's so beloved and so memorable that we have Charlie Brown ranked in our top 50, I believe, as well. We threw about 200 cartoon characters out there when we were deciding on our top 100, and we narrowed it down to 150, then we narrowed it down to 125, and we finally got our top 100. And there were some great characters that didn't make the book because if you're in our top 100 cartoon characters of all time, you're a great character, and we use a lot of different criteria to rank them. We had 4 basic criteria and some other ones too. Legacy, how long these characters have remained in the American consciousness, and how much they impacted American pop culture. A personality, whether they were evil characters or funny characters or superheroes, how well their personalities matched. Voice, uniqueness of voice, do they have cool voices?
Scooby-Doo or Shaggy, some of those guys have got to be in there.
Scooby-Doo's way up there. I won't tell you where it's Scooby-Doo is ranked, Scooby and Shaggy, but top 20.
All right, nice.
We ranked them top 20 of all time. And also, how much these particular characters impacted the shows that they were on. If they were on particular cartoon shows, how much of an impact they made on those shows. So those were the 4 basic criteria that we used. Yeah. And I talk a little bit about that in the program too, the criteria that we use to rank these characters.
I'm wondering, there had to be so many that didn't make the cut. Did you find that, you already mentioned, I think in some ways cartoons are generational. So maybe the cartoons that I enjoyed were different than, I'm not that much younger than you, but I know that what my kids have enjoyed, it's radically changed. There's been Ren and Stimpy and SpongeBob and all these that are more current. How do you compare even a Ren and Stimpy or a SpongeBob to Snoopy? They're both drawn, but
right,
generational. It's so different.
Well, there are two basic, cartoon characters in terms of chronology. There was the pre-television and post-television theatrical shorts period. Obviously, all the Woody Woodpecker and all the Warner Brothers characters and Disney, they were shown before movies and during, in between double features and so forth. Then there was post-television, and post-television, in a lot of ways, the animation wasn't as strong. The animation suffered once television came around because the animators and everyone involved had to work so much faster. They had to come up with new cartoons every day or every week, and the animation just wasn't as strong. But that doesn't mean there weren't a lot of great cartoon characters that were developed during the early television era. My very favorite, the animation's pretty weak, really, but my very favorite cartoon character in television history is Bullwinkle. Very engaging character, yet the animation itself was not, particularly strong in those cartoons. So we based them all on the era in which they were most famous. Although it's blurred because Bugs Bunny is probably just as famous now as he was in 1947 or whatever, maybe even more so. And so it's some of these characters, and that's why legacy is so important in our rankings. If these characters have made an impact on American pop culture for 70, 80, 90 years, we have characters from the last 20 years that are in our top 10, and they're evil. That I won't give away who they are. We have 2 very evil characters that are in our top 10 that are current characters.
Like, I've certainly been watching The Simpsons for a long time, and I have to imagine that they've ranked fairly high because they've had such a staying power.
We have 3 Simpsons characters in our top 100, and one of them is ranked exceptionally high. I won't give away who it is.
Oh,
And,
I can guess. Yeah, don't have a cow, man. Yeah.
right. Well, I won't say anything.
No, it's fair. I'm not asking you to. I wonder how you deal, like in The Simpsons, there was a movie a couple of years ago that took on, and sometimes, cartoons, they do say something about the times that they were produced in and about the culture they come from. I'm thinking about the kind of the controversy around Apu, and how Hank Azarias, has decided he's no longer going to voice Apu because of the stereotyping of the Indian communities. I don't know if you took on any cultural representation when you were looking at these two and took that as a factor. A lot of them, a lot of times people go into cartooning because they can display lots of different ideas and emotions, and they don't get ascribed to a particular ethnicity or cultural background. They, it's, what is it? The Texan that you talked about, your favorite, what was his name again? Yosemite Sam. He's kind of stereotyped, but yeah.
Oh yeah, oh definitely, and there's a lot of talk about violence in cartoons as well, but we, this was important in the program that I talk about, the way that especially not the way these characters have been animated, but the writing in these cartoon shows has changed. Like, for instance, nowadays these writers are getting a lot more involved in the social aspects of, like, the way, social issues that kids might have. There's a character named Timmy in the Fairly Odd Parents, and he has real issues with his babysitter and his parents and so forth. It's a funny cartoon show, but they get a little bit involved in that. There's a character named Tina Belcher on Bob's Burgers, which is a current show.
Oh yeah, they definitely try to be current.
Yeah, and she's 13 years old, but she sounds like a boy, and she's very awkward and doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in herself, and they play off that a little bit. So times have changed. It's not like it used to be, but that doesn't mean they're not great characters. They're just a little bit the reason that I have both those characters in our book, especially the Fairly Odd Parents. I have the Fairly Odd Parents themselves. But anyway, the reason I talk about them and they made our book is because there's a lot of depth to these characters. There's a lot of emotion, not just humor, and they're not one dimensional. So. Sure. I mean, that's always a factor, and I talk a lot about that in the program.
You're mentioning Bob's Burgers took me back to listening to the soundtrack. I don't know if you ever heard. They've done at least one soundtrack for that comic series, which you can listen to, and it's like because music is such a part of it. And there's been great music in all these. We could probably do a whole celebration of animation, the music behind it, because that's evolved too. It's been fascinating.
No doubt about it. I mean, and especially like when I was a kid, I used to love the music in the intros to the shows. I mean, we got a gorilla for sale, Magilla gorilla for sale. Magilla gorilla was my favorite Hanna-Barbera character, and I just loved that stuff. And it just filled me with excitement and anticipation to watch these shows. The lead-in music.
Oh, absolutely. It's super rich. That's great. So I think we should tell people there's going to be clips that are going to be shared during this program too. You have a number of clips, so we'll actually be able to go back and see with new eyes, but also just relive some of this joy. Yeah.
And I definitely wanted to, and I do it this way on purpose. I play only funny cartoons. Mm-hmm. And because I know them the best, and I think they're the most engaging, the most entertaining. And I have cartoons for the last 92 years in here in the program. I show the first talkie from 1928, and I won't give that away. People think it's Steamboat Willie, a Mickey Mouse cartoon, but it's not. So I won't give it away. And then I move forward chronologically. I show a Bugs Bunny, and I show different cartoon snippets all the way up to today. And they're funny, they're engaging, and I also have trivia. I play the voices of cartoon characters, and the patrons have to guess who the voices are, and I have some other trivia. And once again, I talk about the criteria, but I also try to be as engaging as I can with kids and teens. I want to make this program, and it's proven to be really, really attractive to all ages. And I want to stress that it's really something that families can gather around and watch these cartoons and have a really good time with and challenge themselves with these. Some of them are a little easier, some are a little harder, these trivia questions and voices and things. They're just, the bottom line is I just try to make it as fun as I can.
I'm really grateful that you're bringing, a program that can help just bring, some humor and some light, some levity these days. And sometimes these days can be pretty hard lately. So I think this is just a great time for you to be sharing this program with us. And I really appreciate it, Marty. Thank you.
Oh, hey, it's going to be my pleasure. I can't wait. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm totally looking forward to it too. I guess just one word of encouragement. If folks attend and they get really excited, did you find most of these cartoons online? Do you find like there's ways to, dive really deep? I know YouTube's got, endless sources, but where do you usually go when you're looking for your clips?
The vast majority of my clips have been from YouTube and Dailymotion.
Dailymotion.
And I have a couple other ones that are, I'm trying to remember where I got them. I got them a couple, a while back now. But I think Dailymotion and YouTube are the ones that I don't show, entire cartoons, because then I wouldn't be able to show as many cartoons and would take up too much time if I'm showing 7-minute cartoon snippets. But I'm showing like between 2 and 3.5 minutes at a time, and I try to find the best and funniest and most entertaining snippets of these cartoons to show, and that are most indicative of the way these cartoon characters, their personalities, and how they impacted American pop culture. Because I talk a lot before and after each cartoon. I talk a little bit about I give some trivia and some enlightening facts about these cartoon characters to the patrons. And so they're not only entertained, but they're going to be entertained, but they're going to be enlightened as well about cartoons.
And it sounds like a great discovery opportunity, because having studied this so in depth, I'm sure there's cartoon characters that even people who think that they watched, who really feel steeped in cartoons, I bet there'll be some surprises, and they'll see something in a way that they haven't seen it. They may even meet some characters they'd never met before. So I'm really looking forward to that discovery piece, because I always find that's what I love about libraries is we're always, there's always something on the next stack over that you haven't seen. So
I guarantee that your patrons will learn things about characters they know a lot about already, will learn new things about them, and it'll just heighten their appreciation for these particular characters.
All right, on. Well, thank you so much, Marty. I can't wait.
I can't wait either. Thanks for having me. Thanks for bringing me on here, and thanks for having me do this program, because I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to it.
So I've been talking just now with Marty Gitlin, the author of A Celebration of Animation, the 100 Greatest Cartoon Characters in Television History. Marty will be joining us live here on Zoom and on YouTube and Facebook on Wednesday evening, October 21st, starting at 7 o'clock. This is a program for all ages, and I hope that you'll join us then. One of the missions of the library is to foster community. We've been working really hard to find constructive ways to do that in these challenging times. On Thursday evening, October 22nd, we're partnering with March Forward Quincy to host a community conversation about a topic that is very current: social justice. I recently spoke with Tiffany Adams and Nicole DePace about this program, which we plan and hope to be the first of many. I'm talking today with Tiffany Adams and Nicole DePace, who are going to be talking with me about a program that the library is sponsoring on Thursday evening, October 22nd, starting at 7 p.m. It's going to be happening live on Zoom. We will be sharing it on Facebook and YouTube, but it is a conversation that we're happening. So for this program, I strongly encourage you to join us on Zoom so we can have the richest conversation. We may be using breakout groups. We're still figuring out the details. It's a community conversation about social justice. We're encouraging people to read a book before joining us. The book is called When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter Memoir by Patrice Khan-Colors and Asha Bandale. We have some other recommendations on our website. If you look at our calendar listing for things you can read and watch and listen to in preparation, we'll explain more in this conversation. I do want to say that this program on October 22nd is co-sponsored by March Forward Quincy, Quincy for Transformative Change, and Quincy for Justice. And we'll be providing closed captioning for the program with the support of the Friends of the Thomas Crane Library. Nicole joins us from March Forward Quincy, and Tiffany, you're joining us from Quincy for Transformative Change and Quincy for Justice, if I got that right. Is there anybody else you're representing today?
I also represent the Eastern Nazarene College's Black Student Union.
Great. And I think Quincy for Justice was born from Eastern Nazarene and the Black Student Union there, or did it have its own existence before? I don't know the history, actually, of Quincy for Justice.
So Quincy for Justice is a faith-based organization that has 3 entities out of it. So it's Bethel Church of the Nazarene, it's Eastern Nazarene College's Black Student Union, and it's also an organization that I lead, Unified Gospel Ministries, Inc.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm so grateful to have your participation today. And Nicole, you're here with March Forward Quincy. You and I have spoken here on QATV before, and we've done some programs before. But for people who didn't catch those or don't know, the library and March Forward Quincy kind of go back to almost the beginning of March Forward Quincy. I don't know if you want to tell the story a little bit, or if you'd like me to share it.
March Forward Quincy is a progressive community activist group, and we came to be out of the Women's March in 2017. The Women's March that happened, nationally and here locally in Boston. So it was folks who participated in the Women's March. It started out as
the march that happened on the same day or the day before that Trump was inaugurated.
The day after.
Okay.
And so the Women's March organization at that point in time put together 10 action items for people to take who had participated and to take into their communities, one of which was forming huddles and to get to know your community and your neighbors and to figure out who around you was like-minded, like-hearted, and to get out into your communities and start doing the work. And so the first huddle was organized and actually held at Thomas Crane Public Library, and through a series of meetings and folks who have who are still with the group and are not with the group, we became March Forward Quincy. Melissa Shapiro, actually, who's a Quincy resident, called the first Quincy huddle and was part of the steering committee. She's still part of the group, but as life changes and people's kind of their areas of focus shift, she is still a part of the group, but we've got a group of us who have kept things going with the steering committee and with the Quincy community at large. We're a progressive group, we're not a partisan group, and we really do focus on political endeavors and political, whether it's policy, whether it's looking at candidates and looking at educational needs within the community. Our mission is focused on creating a community where everyone feels welcome, where people are well informed, and where we really try to foster and nurture a sense of empathy for one another.
And that certainly dovetails with the library's mission, where we've gone through strategic planning, trying to figure out how we can be most effective and serve the most good in the community, and it boils down to what you expect from a library about satisfying curiosity and stimulating imagination and connecting people to the online world. But the fourth pillar, our fourth priority, is all about fostering community. And so the fact that this huddle came together and has been local people trying to figure out how they can bring people together about issues that are of common concern really works in so many ways very naturally with the library's priorities. So I'm really grateful for the partnership. People may remember you as the moderator for a couple of programs that we sponsored together. So I like to remind folks that if they came to any of the conversations for the at-large candidates for the city council positions, the last couple election cycles, Nicole, you were the moderator for that, for those, and helped organize the entire thing to happen. So it's been a great partnership. I really appreciate all your work in the community.
Yeah, and we have definitely appreciated and benefited from working with the library, and our group has been able to accomplish quite a bit with the support of the library and utilizing the space, but also in partnering with the mission of the library in that sense of community.
Let's fast forward to 2020. Thank you for a little bit of history of March Forward Quincy. I think that's great to share. And it's just, it's a fun piece of local history that people should know. I know that you and I were talking after you attended and people from March Forward Quincy went to some of the Black Lives Matters protests this summer. And Tiffany, I think you were one of the main organizers. I believe you organized a vigil on Wollaston Beach. Was that the first contact that when you two met each other? Do you remember the first time you met Nicole, Tiffany?
I actually recently just realized that I had met Nicole like a couple weeks ago. So
Okay.
My actual first time meeting Nicole was through these meetings, but I physically met Nicole at our rally at City Hall just like, a month ago, if that?
Yeah, we had had some of these planning meetings, and as you're out and about in the times of COVID and you're masked up, I had a hat on and a mask and sunglasses. We all look like we're we're not necessarily easily recognizable out in public, and so I had conversations with Tiffany through Zoom, and then went to introduce myself, and it took a moment for it to click who was who. But yeah, I think I became, so Quincy for Transformative Change, and I don't want to overspeak, but they weren't really a formed group yet. There was the other group, Quincy Neighbors Mutual Aid, and some folks in the community had come together or had put an idea out there about having the vigil, which then turned into the vigil in March in support of Black Lives and in honor of George Floyd. And so that turned into, I think, what the organizers were hoping for. Maybe 20 to 30 people would show up in the Quincy Center to gather and create space for this. Turned into nearly 5,000 people marching through Quincy. And so that was my first introduction to a lot of the folks who have now formed Quincy for Transformative Change.
And I know that Quincy for Transformative Change kind of exploded as a social media community as well this summer, and had a lot of people around the city express interest and get engaged. And there's been task forces, and there's been a huge growth of new activists, I think, which has been really exciting to see people coming together and finding their voice and finding ways to different means of expression, because there's a lot of things that need to be changed, a lot of things that people need to talk about. So in the essence of time, I'd love to figure out, I think the next thing, the step that I want to take is, so you and I were talking Nicole, after one of those demonstrations, and you said that you've been talking to a couple other people, and the idea of bringing people together to discuss this, and more than just the long comment threads on Facebook, something that was trying to get at the matters that people are talking about when we're talking about George Floyd, when we're talking about systemic racism, when we're talking about issues that we've been living with since the beginning of this country and before then, but that have acutely impacted all of our lives. How do we have substantive conversations where we can bring people together and dive into these beyond signs and everything else? And we met with a few other people and kicked around some ideas about what we could do to really bring people together and dive in. And we came up with an idea, I think, collectively about having a community discussion series that we've branded as Brave Spaces. I think, Tiffany, you introduced the idea of calling them a brave space, which I love. Maybe if you can remember, or if you can just kind of do it off the cuff, tell us what a brave space is. We've called this about brave space creation. What does that mean?
I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard this notion of what a safe space is. And basically, it's almost similar, and it came from safe space. The biggest difference between a safe space and a brave space is a safe space allows for white people to be safe, but it's not a safe space for people of color, where a brave space allows for you to be edited when you say something that is discriminating against a particular group of people. So there's this notion of first draft language where you're able to say something. Well, in a safe space, if a non-person of color says anything, no one will go back and edit it. No one will correct you. No one will say anything. And that isn't really a safe space for people of color. But in a brave space, it's like, hey, there's first draft language, but it's with edits. So you can say something, but be ready for someone to help you edit it. So we'll tell you like, okay, that actually was a microaggression, and this is a better way for you to have said that. And it gives room for you to grow and for that person who you offended to educate you. And so that's the biggest difference between a brave space and a safe space. And that's what brave spaces are. It's an area, well, everybody in that area has to be brave enough to say things and to edit each other and to really have a really tough conversation. But at the end of that conversation, education can happen. And at the end of that conversation, you're more unified because you were able to learn together. You were able to understand how you offend people, and you were able to grow. And so I recommend using a brave space more than a safe space, because a safe space hurt people of color. A brave space allows us to be unified.
I love that. I mean, and that's, I think you expressed that really, really, just really clearly, the idea of growth and unity. And so I know that's what we were looking to come together and talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the brave space that we're going to be, the first brave space that we're going to be creating, or working to create. We're doing these conversations around specific pieces of work. And for this first piece of work, we're encouraging people to read the book ahead of time. We picked When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives memoir. And we're encouraging people to read the book. They can certainly request it from the library. They can listen to it. We have it available to stream for free on Hoopla. But we also have some other recommendations if they go out and look at the calendar, because we've got some movies, we've got some conversation with Patrice. Now, I'm curious if either of you know, I know on the book cover it says Patrice Concours, but I've seen recently she's just going as Patrice Colors. So I don't know if you know a preferred way to refer to her, but we know who we're talking about. We have some YouTube videos and some podcasts with Ms. Colors with Patrice. However, I don't know the best way to refer to her, so please correct me if you know a better way. We hope that people will engage with these works, but we totally understand that people are busy, that people have lots of different things that they're trying to consume and educate and calm themselves in these times. So even if they don't have any time to read those, at the beginning of this program, you, Tiffany, and some people that are helping you will be presenting some core ideas, and then we'll be asking people to engage, to step forward and be brave and talk about what these ideas mean here in Quincy. Is that a fair summary of what you're both envisioning happening?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I don't know if you want to say anything more about the book or anything else to encourage folks to engage with it. I think that might be a little incentive, maybe. I could talk about it, but I'd love to hear one of you say why you really hope people will read this book.
We really want you to engage in this book because we want you to see Black people. We're human beings. Like, we're not animals. We're not people who are trying to kill anyone. We're not people who are like trying to go crazy. We're not all gang members. We're not all thugs. Some of us have had really tough lives. And this book really does a really good job of diving into that, into lives that have been destroyed because of a system that is being oppressive, that we kind of just were born into. We didn't do anything for the system to oppress. We literally were either brought here on slave ships, like my ancestors, or some of us have come here because we're looking for this notion of an American dream. And like, I just want people to like really look at this book and really see like the treatment and like how Black people actually are being treated here, and know that like when we're out here saying Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that your life doesn't matter. We're not saying that we want all white people to die or that Christians aren't real. And we're not saying any of those things. We're just saying stop killing us. We're literally just saying that I have a life that is worth living. And so this book touches on that.
And it talks about a complicated life. I mean, I think, and whenever we get to know people, we have, it's the multifaceted personality. You can't define any of us by the color of our skin, by what we eat, by the people we love. There's so many different dimensions to each of us. And I also think that's something the book does, is help explore, we can't reduce Black people. When we say Black Lives Matter, it's all Black lives. I know that's been central to Black Lives Matter. It's not, we can't say only, Black, straight businessmen lives matter. That's not it. It's everybody. We need to embrace all the different expressions of Blackness and all the different ways people can be, because it's about lives. It's not about some idea. So
I think the book is important for a few reasons, and from the perspective of a white woman, and as an American, I think that a lot of people have an understanding that Black Lives Matter, the movement, just started this summer. And it really, this has been a years-long response to injustice and oppression, and seeing the way that, and it's what's really striking to me, the way that young Black people are treated by our police and our criminal justice system, and the ripple effects that has on communities. And I think that it is a movement that was started by women, Black women, in response to the trauma that they were living through and that was happening to their families. And so I think it's really important to understand the history of this, and that it didn't just start after George Floyd was murdered this summer. And I think it's really important to see that it's a response to what's happening to people, to families, to communities, and to our country. And that it's a response that comes with answers. So they're not just, it is not just about the Black Lives Matter movement resisting things or protesting things. They're also demanding things, and they're also reimagining things, and they're also recommending things, and they are successful in being able to change their lives and our lives and communities. And I think it's good to have an understanding of why we should be listening. And that was one of the things that I got out of this book. And it's just it's a memoir, so it's a very human story, and it gives a lot of heart to this movement. So I think that there's a lot to gain from reading the book and then being able to discuss it.
Nicole, Tiffany, thank you so much. I hope that people will take these words to heart, and they will engage with some of these works that we've been talking about. They'll go out to the website and find some links so they can learn more, that they'll place a copy and hopefully read this book or engage with it in other ways. And mostly, I hope that people will tune in and join us for this crucial conversation. We talked about this being the first of several, and hopefully we can stay true to that vision. I'm certainly excited about this possibility and about bringing people together, and really appreciative and grateful for both of your efforts and the other people who have been doing it with us. So thank you so much for talking with me today, and may we continue moving forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you both.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed my conversation just now with Tiffany Adams and Nicole DePace. We were just talking, if you tuned in after the beginning, about a program happening sponsored by the library on Thursday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. The name of that program, which you can find on our online calendar from our website, is Brave Spaces Community Conversations about Social Justice. I hope you will join us on the 22nd so we can continue this conversation with a larger audience. When everything shut down last March, we were in the middle of our winter-spring concert series. Live music has been seriously impacted by the measures we need to take to help prevent spreading the coronavirus. I suspect just about all of us have been deprived of original music performed by more than one person or two since at least last March. Have I got a treat to share with you this month? The Charles River Sinfonietta is a 7-piece group who recently recorded a full concert in our gorgeous Richardson Room. We couldn't have a live audience to appreciate it, but we are bringing you the next best thing, a debut performance. We'll be sharing the concert recording right here on QATV, YouTube, and on Facebook, simultaneously. To make it even more special, they performed 5 movements from a piece that Beethoven wrote early in his life, which is especially fitting as we recognize his 250th birthday this fall. We have a special preview of the concert to share with you now. I hope you will enjoy this movement and come back and join us on the 27th for the full concert. Wasn't that a great piece? I'm sure you can't wait to join us for the full concert. In addition to all the programs that I've been talking about for adults this month, we have a lot for teens and younger people too. Please check out our website and our children's Facebook page for the most up-to-date information. That's all for this episode of At Your Library. Hopefully, you've enjoyed learning about some of what's happening at your library this month. If you'd like to learn more, I strongly encourage you to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, where you can also find some staff picks for some of the favorite things that we're reading, watching, and listening to. The best way to stay up to date on the latest library news is to visit thomascranelibrary.org. Sign up for our monthly email newsletter, and like our Facebook pages, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want to be wherever you are. If there's someplace else that you're watching where you're spending a lot of time that you think it would be good for the library to have a presence, please let me know. You can send me an email at ccheever@ocln.org. I'm Clayton Cheever. Thanks for joining me for a look at what's happening at your library this month. I hope you enjoyed the conversations I've shared and learning more about what's going on at the library. We're working hard to bring you what you need in these challenging times. I hope you'll join us online and appreciate all of our efforts. Please continue to stay safe and healthy. I look forward to seeing you again in November.